the main idea of Twin Peaks is that America is the downward slope to hell. The place where hell, or at least some sort of other world, is the closest to our world, the world of humans. Because again, historically, America is the end of the world. Greetings, this is Eugene the Philosopher, the greatest living philosopher after the unfortunate passing of Quentin Robert de Nameland, who has been the greatest living philosopher before me. On this channel, we've already had a video where I compare Dark to Stranger Things, and I demonstrate how differences in European culture with respect to Dark and American culture with respect to Stranger Things kind of manifest when you describe a very similar topic, a similar topic of two worlds colliding or something to that effect, okay? A hermetic topic. By the way, I'm gonna make a Patreon exclusive video about Hermeticism soon. Maybe even today. But there is a much older and much more famous, arguably even, at least with somewhat of a cult following, TV series called Twin Peaks, which also bears similarities to both of those previously mentioned, right? Dark and Stranger Things. And the thing is, no pun intended, Twin Peaks deals with the same topic. However, I mean, if you haven't realized yet, this video is about Twin Peaks. So I've just watched it yesterday. I finished the last episodes, and I have some points to make about it, alright? So in fact, I would claim that I have an idea of how to interpret what is shown, alright? At least that's one possible interpretation, alright? Let me prepare some exit points here. So anyways, so the similarity between Twin Peaks, Stranger Things, and Dark is about, they're all about some small town, and they're all about two worlds colliding, roughly speaking, alright? So yeah, and again, it's hermetic. Hermes is the messenger between two worlds. So the main idea, long story short, of Twin Peaks TV series, I would claim, is that it's actually kind of not even a story, the series, it's rather a painting. And I would claim that Twin Peaks is the painting of America. Like, it depicts America as it is. And it depicts it in the way that America is represented as the end of the world. And remember my older video, I'm gonna link it in the description, just as well as the video about Dark and Stranger Things, where I claim that the end of the world is not a time, it's a place, and this place is America, alright? And I believe that David Lynch in his Twin Peaks is actually following the same idea, or you may argue I'm following the same idea as David Lynch, chronologically at least, is indeed America is the end of the world, namely the end of human world. And what do I mean by that? Is, roughly speaking, there is a world of humanity, and there is, roughly speaking, hell, alright? Or at least some other world. And America is somewhere in between. It's like this downward slope from humanity to hell. And this is America, this slope, right? So it's partly human, but partly already in hell. Or at least it's like the last outpost of humanity at the gates of hell. You can consider it in this sort of respect. I think Twin Peaks is about this. I think this is the main topic. And once again, it's not a story. It's just, we're walking around the place and observing, and like browsing it essentially, right? So this is the main point of this video. For many reasons, obviously, this is the case. I mean, America is historically kind of the last place where white people, roughly speaking, went, right? I mean, not really the last, but you know what I mean. I mean, the other places have already been heavily inhabited, and America was the only one relatively empty. I mean, okay, Australia kind of is also, but culturally, the value of Australia is, I mean, so much lower than America that it's not worth talking about, alright? At least in the context of this video. We're talking about the world hegemon right now, right? The USA, for now at least. So yeah, the old civilization centers such as Europe, Asia, and Northern Africa, for example, are too cramped, right? So there is no vast landscape there. So it's not a place anymore in the sense that there isn't much space, or there isn't much room there, right? So the entry to hell in Europe, Asia, and Africa is kind of individual and is limited by the size of your apartment, if you wish. Everyone has their personal hole through which hell kind of breaks loose, so to speak. But America is a planet-wide hole through which hell can enter, or you can enter hell if you wish, all right? So I'm gonna draw a couple of illustrations to this point of mine. So the first point I want to make is, again, I've already made it, that it's not really a story. There is no classical story elements. There is no conflict, roughly speaking. I mean, you can derive some conflicts there, here and there, and even like there is like a almost like a forced conflict, right, between like the doppelganger Cooper and like the real Cooper, etc. But there is no conflict really. And therefore, like the usual machinery through which storyline evolves, like people making critical decisions and like getting a different outcome that they expected and then transforming it to some synthetic outcome afterwards, like all of this doesn't work here, right? So the dramatic theory doesn't work in Twin Peaks, because again, it's not a story. It's more like a, okay, I wanted to say another thing right now, that Deus ex machina is the main story device in Twin Peaks, because again, it cannot use any other devices. They're forbidden because it's not a story in the first place. So, like characters are just kind of floating around and stuff is just kind of happening to them, right? This is what I mean, like out of the blue, so to speak, right? Through the intrusion of this other world, this hell or whatever. So, therefore, magic and dreams become like a true plot vehicles. Again, Deus ex machina, as I've just said. Then another point is high visual density of the story of the series, right? So we have like it's very heavy visually. Like you gotta look at stuff a lot, right? You can't just listen to dialogue. You gotta actually look at stuff. So it reinforces my point that it's not a story, it's a painting, right? And we're just being shown one piece here, then one piece here, then one piece there, and we're kind of like accumulating it all and getting a better and better picture of what is happening, or rather what is, right? Not happening, but what is. And what is? America is the downward slope from humanity to hell, essentially. An outpost of humanity at the gates of hell. So yeah, another point is a mixture, a very interesting mixture of like Christian, Native American, like other polytheistic, even Buddhist thought in it, right? So it has this sort of perennial taste, that it kind of revives all these traditions, again, Hermetic traditions, essentially, talking about the other world and our connection to the other world, like paganism. What is paganism? It's essentially talking to spirits, and spirits are from another world, right? So, yeah. I think what they've really missed would be an inclusion of, let's say, a black dude from Louisiana or something with their own, like, you know, some sort of like Western African ancestry, you know, like this sort of like shamanism or whatever. That would be really cool. But even as it is, it's kind of fine. So in this outpost of humanity at the gates of hell, we have a mixture of various peoples, right, with their cultures and their view of this entry to hell, essentially, and what hell is. Or I keep saying hell, by the way, but I don't mean it in a biblical sense. I don't even mean it in a bad sense necessarily, even though mostly, all right? Because like I'm just talking about another world, but somehow the way it's shown in Twin Peaks is kind of like hell. Let's be honest. It's not good most of the time as well, but disregard this. Let's just use the word hell, but just keep in mind I'm not talking about literal hell or even a hell of Dante, but something similar to that, some inferno like that, actually. So yeah, and obviously the story has a bunch of like purely American elements. Like there's a lot of cars, there's telegraph. There's, well, I mean, purely American. You know what I mean. I'm not literal in this sense. Telegraph, a lot of emphasis onto electricity, right? Machinery, by the way, a lot of like various, like this Philip Jeffries becomes a teapot of some sorts, you know, like stuff like that. And it is like there is some hell in machinery, right? And America is one of the strongest industrial nations, at least in the 20th century, kind of shows that, all right? That the machine, there's no God in the machine maybe, but there's a devil in the machine for sure. There's something hellish, non-human, right? So when we're descending from humanity to somewhere else, we're getting closer to hell, and therefore machines are in hell, kind of. So yeah, that's why you can see a lot of technical stuff. All right. Another, by the way, there is this Monica Bellucci dream, right, of David Lynch, and in general this sort of saying, I don't remember the exact quote, but they said something like, we're living in a dream, right? And who lives in a dream, you know? What kind of dream have you heard about? The American dream, right? So they're talking about America specifically. So another point I want to make is, like to illustrate my main point, of course, is that there is this sort of immediate neighborhood, like just scenically, how they show it to you. The immediate neighborhood of like almost schizophrenic, you know, psychotic, magical and horrific scenes with absolutely mundane, boring, uninteresting, etc., kind of scenes, all right? Not deserving to be shown, really. And some scenes are actually deliberately overblown. Like I remember in episode 3, there's quite a few of those scenes. Like when they stand and Diane is smoking and they're just standing there for like 3 minutes and like looking at each other and nothing is happening. Or there's a scene at the bar where a guy is mopping the floor and the bartender is like counting something, and it also continues for like 4 minutes or something. And well, maybe like 2, but it feels like an eternity, I'm telling you. And like it's deliberate. We're showing you humanity, the mundane. Then we're showing you the magical, the schizophrenic, the horrific, the hell, right? And we keep switching our view from here to there, because that's how we show America. America is the slope from one to the other. See what I'm saying? Like, this is Twin Peaks. This is America. The most American TV series, actually. So, yeah. So you keep thinking like, oh my God, where is this gonna end actually? In both cases, because, you are either bored or horrified, right? Like so maybe this is one other answer as to why Americans love end of the world scenarios so much. They don't want the humanity, the mundane. They don't want the horror of hell either. So they just want everything to end, right? Watch my videos about the end of the world where I talk about this quite a bit. Anyways, America is this downward slope. And again, like you could imagine, like living on some other planet like Mars, for example. In your habitation dome, you have humanity, but outside, it's a cold, freezing desert, just like, again, Dante's hell is, essentially. Like, in case you're not aware, Dante's hell is cold. It's not hot, right? Or Event Horizon, I keep mentioning this horror movie, which I really love. It has the same kind of vibe, by the way, the same hermetic vibe, where warp engines become the bridge between the humanity and the hell, right? Something like that. Another point is the lack, in support of my main point, is the lack of focus on nature, on the environment, on some sort of vast expanse. You might say, well, what the hell? There is a lot of focus. There's a lot of scenery of this sort. I would claim no, there's not. There's only a couple of scenes which just keep repeating over and over. But all the events of the story, which I claim is not even a story, happen in very isolated, only a few places really, throughout the 3 seasons, alright? Actually, only in season 3, they even introduce other places, alright? Like other states, etc. So it's like, again, continuing this analogy with Mars, like it's those small habitation zones where the comparison between humanity and hell all around can be made, right? Something like that. So Cooper noticed that. Keeps marveling at nature only at the very beginning, like literally the very first few series. Like, he keeps asking, like, hey, what are those trees? Ah, so cool. Oh, what are those birds? Ah, nice. But then, when he faces this descent to hell, and again, descent is not a process in this context. It's more like a landscape, all right? He stops asking those questions. He stops even looking at nature. He's all about people now, right? How do people behave when they're neighboring hell? So the story of Cooper is actually the story of a man from modernity, a man who was kind of clouded by science and had a complete misunderstanding of the world because of that, right? The world, I mean, like almost with a capital W, the world that is like including more than just science, more than just nature. That's what I'm talking about, all right? Because at first he only looks at nature, but then he notices that there is some other crap going on, and he starts to remember things from Tibet and blah, 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 right? And then he starts using all those weird practices to uncover who the killer was, etc., etc. So this means like he already outgrows science, right? It's essentially some sort of like a self, I don't know, what's the proper word? Like, I forgot. Like self-overcoming, yeah, of a scientist, something like that. Okay, so science cannot be the only answer. And in this way, by the way, it was very personally relatable to me. All right, so I've pretty much finished with my main thing. I'll just notice a couple of things that interested me along the way. So why is it called Twin Peaks, for example? So at first, I mean, the Freemason-minded of you might think, well, it's Boaz and Yakin, right? The pillars at the Temple of the Solomon, 2 pillars, right? That's why you have Twin Peaks. But I think it's actually not that. I don't think it has this symbolism because, well, at least to me, it would make no sense. I think it's more about the Greek twins, like if there is any symbolism at all in this. So the Greek twins, right? Castor and Pollux, the Gemini constellation, right? So one of them is divine and one of them is mortal, which again indicates this Hermeticism, right? The link between the world of mortals and the world of the divine, right? So, yeah. And like once again, let's talk about this duality for a moment again. So I have this video, Perpendicular Worlds, which where I describe the problem in general. Essentially, yeah, I'm gonna make a Patreon special about this, about polytheism and Hermeticism specifically, like what it is and why was it so prevalent in culture. Probably because it's true, actually, right? But there is a dualism of another sort, for example. There is this White Lodge and the Black Lodge, right? Or there are these famous wolves, you know, this famous saying, Native American saying, like, in every man there are 2 wolves, one evil one, one good one, and like, and somebody asked, well, who wins? Like, whichever wolf you feed, right? So everyone has this potential for, roughly speaking, heaven and hell. But I mean, it's kind of trivial what I'm saying, right? But still, there is duality of this sort as well. And by the way, Hawke says that, remember when they're looking with the sheriff, I think, they're looking at this painting, the Native American map or whatever, and he says, well, this fire, like, it can be both good fire and a bad fire, right? Oh, and by the way, in this poem about fire, right, the famous poem of Twin Peaks, what does it say? Through the darkness of futures past, the magician longs to see one chance out between 2 worlds. Fire, walk with me. Hermeticism, right? The world of humans and hell, as in America, or the world of humans and different world in general, right? Or the world of physics and the world of meaning, as in Eugene the Philosopher, right? Also a Hermetic tradition. Okay, so, yeah. And who's the magician, right? It's the one who can connect both worlds. It's a Hermeticist, an alchemist, if you wish, right? Okay, anyways. like, I've thought that like the same Hermetic symbolism is applicable to Nadine, because it's a very classical, the one-eyed girl, right? It's a very classical depiction, right? All these photos that you've seen of Hermeticism, right? The eye that is alive, so to speak, that can see the world of living, and the eye that is blind that can see the world of the dead. Again, Hermes is the messenger. Well, in this case, you could say Charon is the messenger, but it doesn't matter. And interestingly, one-armed man, right? Who had both arms, but one arm was bad, with a tattoo, and he cut it off or something. He became only a good man, right? Only a man with a potential for good. Or Diane, when she gets to the world of meaning or whatever, the other world, she's blind, right? She becomes the blinded girl. They even write her name in the subtitles if you read backwards, Naido, right? Like Diane backwards, but with O at the end, so that we wouldn't figure it out, you know. But yeah. So yeah. By the way, tattoo as a symbol of like what you are. I want to mention Planescape Torment here, like an honorable mention. Like it has this great quote. Like I have a tattoo, and exactly because of this game, and it's exactly the same as in this game because I can relate to it very much. So the quote is something like, "The body remembers even when the mind has forgotten." All right. So this is, in my eyes, this is the meaning of tattoos. The body remembers even if you have already forgotten something, right? So in case you don't want to remember anymore, I guess you just have to cut it off with your own flesh. Anyways, so I want to talk about episode 8 specifically. So I think season 3, by the way, this is one of the most disturbing, let's say, pieces of entertainment I've ever consumed, I've ever witnessed. Like it's a truly horrible thing. Well, first of all, there's a whole 9 Inch Nails song there, like a whole song, like 5 minutes, right? We'll talk about music in a minute. But what's more terrifying is what follows. Like that there's like 40 minutes of such horrific imagery, like you can't imagine. Well, you can imagine, obviously, if especially if you've watched it. But yeah, like this is like already on the brink of hell, maybe even slightly below. But what I want to talk about is specifically, why I want to talk about this specifically is because I think it shows us, I'm sorry, it's incredibly hot in here. Because it shows us the origins, I think, of the whole thing. And notice the running themes. So Major Briggs studies UFOs, right? And also this guy, the villain of season 2, I forgot his name. Goddamn. This other FBI agent who went rogue. He has a very strange name, so I didn't remember it. I cannot, sorry. He was also working on the UFOs, right? But what Major Briggs says is that at some point, with the Project Blue Book, like we figured out that maybe there is no aliens like up there. Maybe the aliens are down here, right? And he said we started looking downwards, so to speak, into the earth, if you wish, right? And again, we arrive at this idea of hell, right? Something like that, and like space as hell, aliens from hell, like, you know, like that. We start bringing up these kinds of ideas. By the way, I like the idea that one of my friends once mentioned, that space is hell, kind of. At least in the sense of Dante, in the sense that it's absolutely cold, right? It's absolutely cold and unfit for humans at the very least. So space is hell, really. But still, if we return to more usual depictions of hell, so Major Briggs says we started looking downwards, like right here, where we are, and what we see is we're getting some strange readings, right? Some strange messages. And I want to bring up for you, if you're not aware, an idea of ultraterrestrials. which I actually hold, like I think this is the case, that the so-called aliens, whatever form they may take, or they may or may not take, like I think the absolute majority of cases of so-called UFOs or aliens are garbage, but at least some are legit. At least this is my current understanding. And I think that they don't come from outer space. They actually come from down below, so to speak. These are basically older inhabitants of this planet. And this is kind of what is shown in Twin Peaks to a degree. And I want to stress how it's all related to nukes, right? So what we are shown in episode 8 is the Trinity test, and how later on afterwards some cosmic monster vomits out this Bob creature, right? So this is where it all began, sort of. And you probably know that UFOs kind of began after the nuclear test, right? The Roswell in 1947, etc., etc. So it seems like we've opened a gateway to hell in a way, right? Culturally, it feels that way. With the nuclear explosions, we're kind of opened some portal to hell. And this is what is shown in episode 8, essentially. The portal to hell, right? So, yeah. There's a very funny short video called Black Betty Demon Core. I'm gonna link it in the description. It's so funny, you gotta watch. So, anyway. The hell started to manifest after these nuclear tests. And what's really important here is that America became the world hegemon after the nuclear tests, right? After the World War II. So, like, it all fits together perfectly, at least in my eyes. Like, this is why Lynch is showing us the nuclear test. This is why he's making all these connections. This is why Major Briggs says this. This is why Twin Peaks is, like, all about America. It's the painting of America, alright? Notice, Sheriff Harry S. Truman. Who is Harry S. Truman? It's the president, during the presidency of whom the bombs were dropped, right? It's the president who kind of simultaneously helped and sort of like truncated a bit the descent to hell, right? He allowed the bombs to be dropped, but he didn't allow more bombs to be dropped, if that makes any sense, right? Something to that effect. So he's right on the doorstep, right at the gateway to hell, right at the threshold. That's why Sheriff is Harry S. Truman, right? Okay. I think we're ready for the conclusion. So the conclusion to this video, it's not the end of the video, by the way, but it's the conclusion, is that the main idea of Twin Peaks is that America is the downward slope to hell. The place where hell, or at least some sort of other world, is the closest to our world, the world of humans. Because again, historically, America is the end of the world. And again, I'm gonna quote myself here, that the end of the world is not a time, it's a place. And this place is America, as Twin Peaks shows, right? America is the outpost of humanity at the gates of hell. So the moral of the story, I guess, one of the morals of the story that Twin Peaks shows us is that, again, a hermetic sort of moral, is that the only source of evil is people, right? Hell cannot manifest through nature, for example. It can only manifest through people and their actions. Same could be said about heaven. Same could be said about any other idea of this sort. Only through people, both good and bad spirits, again, demons, angels, or gods, the proverbial wolves of Native Americans, right, can manifest. Like, see my video, How to Believe in God in 2024, where I give this idea in more detail. A couple of concluding remarks, all right? Like, I'm still kind of baffled by the appearance of this glove guy from Britain in the movie. I guess Lynch wanted to demonstrate, like, a slightly bigger perspective, right? How America fits in a larger context. That the guy from a normal culture, well, normal in case of England is a bit of an exaggeration, but, you know, a guy from almost Europe, let's say, like also like decides to descend to hell, like be a hero, right? What a hero does, he descends into hell to find the elixir. And that's another demonstration of my main point, right? Or the duality of Cooper himself, where Audrey tells him, like, almost, like, not exact quote, but your only problem is that you are too perfect, right? And then from this Cooper, who's almost perfect, like the almost perfectly evil creature appears, right? It's not even duality, more like a triality or whatever with respect to Cooper, because there was a third one, right? So it was almost like the good Cooper, like the just vanilla Cooper, got separated into three, like a purely good, this vegetable, a purely bad, this doppelganger, and a normal human, actually, like the Dougie Jones. So yeah. And again, it kind of illustrates the slope, right? To show the slope, you need kind of like, I don't know, probably a bad metaphor, forget it. Alright, so I was thinking about like what similar pieces of media there are to Twin Peaks. One example I immediately came up with is Disco Elysium, and I have a video about it. Another example, like it's very similar in its vibe, at the very least to the first season. The first season of Twin Peaks and Disco Elysium like has the same vibe. So if you like Twin Peaks, maybe you'll enjoy Disco Elysium video game, and vice versa. Another thing I remembered is Coen Brothers. I think Coen Brothers, like, it's not as psychotic as Twin Peaks, their movies, but they're somewhere close, actually. They're somewhere close, somewhere out there. So check them out if you haven't. Okay, so another thing I'm still baffled with is why is Gordon Cole deaf? Like, what is the meaning of that? I haven't figured it out yet. Maybe just for comic relief so he can speak funnily, right? Because, like, he's the director of the goddamn TV series. It would be weird for him to speak normally, right? Like, he has to be somewhere, like he's not there almost, so that people wouldn't be kind of, cringed out by his appearance on the screen in the first place. I really liked the fact that in season 3, every episode was ending with a music piece. I think it was a great, like, thing. Like some episodes just have music, like songs, whole songs in the middle, right? But anyway, so why did I like it is because, well, in one of my recent videos, like, what did we talk about? I don't remember how it was called, but I'm gonna link it in the description. Like, about the truth, right? The music is the closest thing we have to the truth. Because, this famous Buddhist or whatever Taoist saying, like, a word spoken aloud is a lie, right? Well, music is not spoken aloud. Like, every music piece contains multiple stories at once, right? So it's like, almost like ending the episode with a musical piece, like Lynch is telling us, like, kind of like, relax. Like, we've shown you some weird stuff, but even we don't fully understand what we're showing you, alright? So perhaps it can't even be understood at all, but let the music be your guide at least, to at least embrace it. So yeah, we're showing you a painting of America. Maybe not every detail of it would make sense on its own, but overall, and if you're in an aesthetic mood with the help of music, it will come together eventually, right? Something like that. I think that was the idea, at least intuitively, that he had. And again, returning to the descent into the underworld, right? The agents disappear, right? In this Blue Rose project. So they disappear, they descend into the underworld, but they cannot get back, right? Philip Jeffries turns into a kettle or whatever. But Cooper was the only one to return, right? It's the proverbial descent and the return with the elixir. I mean, season 3 ended kind of like in a way the elixir wasn't really found, right? There's some work needed to be done still. But anyway, this is again a reference to this classic story. In this sense, I'm contradicting myself because I've said Twin Peaks has no story, right? Well, maybe I'm wrong then. I don't know. Well, that would be all. Oh my God. It was what, 40 minutes? Probably longer. Well, I really tried to make it as brief as I could, but there's a lot to talk about. But the main idea is, again, that America is the outpost of humanity at the gates of hell. And Twin Peaks is not a story about it, but rather a painting of it. Thank you for watching. The eons are closing.
If you wish to support me, please consider joining my Patreon. That is patreon.com/philosopher. See the link in the description. Or if you have a scientific theory of your own and you'd like my help in developing it, please join my alternative science coaching program, also available through Patreon.